Good morning, everyone. My name is Atul Khosla, and welcome to the show. Welcome to this wonderful discussion. May I request other panelists to please join me? We have Professor Raman Ramanathan, Dr. Amrita Sadarangani, and Professor P. J. Narayan. May I please request them to join the webinar? Thank you. And once again, good morning to everyone. My name is Atul Khosla, and I'll be the moderator for the day today. The topic for discussion is going to be sustainability in the context of the new education policy and also opportunities for the state of Telangana. As we all understand, the global higher educational environment has dramatically changed. We are seeing some very, very big players emerging very, very strong, and they might even become stronger with the advent of online and COVID. The new education policy hopefully will put India into the world map of higher education. Hopefully we'll have many, many more larger higher educational institutions. The big question that we have is, who's going to fund this? How will this be funded? So I was doing some numbers over here, and as per my estimates, if we have to follow up and meet the 50% gross enrollment ratio that the government of India plans, we will need $1 trillion over the next 15 years. So what is going to be the funding plan for this $1 trillion? Is there going to be a government-private partnership that we saw a lot in the United States after the World War? Or it's going to be more government-funded as we saw in India in the past? I think some of these questions we're going to talk about. We're going to talk about, like I said, government-public funding. We'll speak about competitive grants. Can private universities pitch into those? Can they partner with global players like the University of Edinburgh? And finally, how can they tap into endowments? So that's really going to be the discussion for the day today. I'm going to start with asking each of the panelists to speak about 4 to 5 minutes on the views. We will please stick to 4 to 5 minutes. Would love some recommendations. What can Telangana do very specifically to build great universities of the world? Before I actually get into this, I'd like to lay a little bit of context. When we look at funding and look at size of institutions, let's look at a top 20 global university like UPenn, University of Pennsylvania. The total funding of UPenn, yearly funding, is something in the region of $20 billion. That's the annual funding of UPenn. And I'm sure University of Edinburgh might have very similar funding numbers. An IIT, a big IIT like IIT Bombay typically will have funding of around 1,500 to 2,000 crores. That's fundamentally different in terms of size and scale. So do we believe Indian institutions can compete with these very, very large global players? Will innovation play a role over here, or we'll have to ramp up our overall numbers in terms of sustainability and financials? I think that's going to be the topic today. So I'm going to request Professor P. J. Narayanan to start, and we'll then go to Amrita, and then I'll give my views. Over to you, Professor Narayanan.
Good morning. Thank you, Atul. Thanks for the organizers to invite me and give me the opportunity. I am the director of IIIT, the International Institute of Information Technology at Hyderabad. Our own institute started in 1998 in today's, which is a young institute by global institutional standards, but the Indian pantheon of institutions, we are definitely the middle-aged institutions, at least in the engineering and that areas. So this is a very important question in the light of NEP, or before that also, the idea of sustainability of institution. So let me tell you a little bit about our own institution that is also located in Telangana. In Telangana, has two glorious examples of institutions which are self-sufficient or hopefully sustainable. It's only 20 years old now. One is our own IIIT Hyderabad, which started in 1998 as an institution that focused on broad IT areas, but a very research-oriented institution, not just provide graduates or teaching program. Then we have our neighbor, the ISB, Indian School of Business, which is focused very narrowly on the broad MBA or that space of topics, and both have done very well in the last 20 years that they existed. ILP started in 2001, started classes. We started in 1998. both received generous land support and a few things from the state government. In fact, ISB was, there's a big competition between multiple states to house ISB. But none of these institutions has received even a single rupee from any governmental sources for its routine operations of salaries or bills and so on. We raise every rupee ourselves. I can tell more about my own institution. And we get money, the tuition fees, of course, about more than half our revenues today, but we also get money from for the research supported through various research grants. And in the last couple of years, the research grants have been split almost evenly 50-50 between governmental sources and corporate sources. In the early years, of course, governmental sources dominated because we needed to establish our credentials and a track record before the private sector would come and start funding research. And we also have a fundraising effort started. Being a young institution, we don't have alumni who can endow big time, but we have started very small. Within 5 years of the first batch graduating, they have been supporting in scholarships for needy students within the institution for the last 15 years or so. And we are expanding that on other aspects, especially infrastructural aspects. So you look at an institution like ours, which is thankfully focused on a very niche and area that is kind of current today, that is IT, broad IT areas. So like I said, more than 50% of our revenues come from tuition fee, which is possible to do because we have, as an institution, we are told we have the highest average salary for the outgoing bachelor's graduate of any institution in India. I mean, we don't believe in this kind of numbers so much. Others tell us this. In an IT field and being a top institution, that's not surprising. At the same time, the money required to fund infrastructure. If you are a good institution, you want to grow and you want to expand. Society expects you to do that. Money to fund the buildings and hostels and other classrooms. These take as much money by our calculation. The running expenses will cost almost equal to the capital expenses for expansion if you annualize it per student basis. And we cannot increase tuition to that level, then we'll become some other kind of institution. So this is a challenge, but we are doing quite well. And similar is the story with ISB, I'm sure. So this going forward, the NEP also talks about multidisciplinarity. So both ISB and IIIT are examples of being in the right discipline in these times where you can actually get attention of prospective students and funding agencies and be able to, we are able to do well financially because of that. I cannot imagine starting programs even in regular sciences, not to talk about social sciences and the broad areas of that any university should focus on. And because the tuition fee that you can charge in those areas will be not be the same as what we can do in comfortably in these areas. So sustainability is about that, but it's also about sustainability of the model. How can institutions, whether it is large universities or small institutions, relatively smaller institutions like IIIT Hyderabad, how can institutions also sustain the model? A good institution, dynamic institution should be able to start new programs, but it should be able to also close old programs which are not somehow working out as well as they should. So the institutional model, the good thing about NEP is that it at least talks about institutions being completely autonomous in the sense the boards or board of governors which exist in all institutions, whether it's the state universities, the central universities, or the IITs. But do they have the full power to appoint themselves, appoint the director, etc.? Today, that is not the case. Institutions like ours or ISB do have that because we are not taking regular money from the government. Our board of governors or equivalent are empowered to do those decisions. But transferring that to every institution is envisaged in NEP. I hope that really happens. Then the institution will have the ability to chart their own course. So sustainability in financial sense as well as in the models, programs, etc., are very important for any institution to grow. Scale is with scale, that is increasing the number of students is a way to sustainability, but that has its own problems in terms of infrastructure requirement, in terms of the problems that can come. The example is, of course, we have the University of Pennsylvania, you mentioned, there's Edinburgh University or all the big universities. There are also Caltech, which is 2,200 students today. They're 100 years old. They are ranked among the top institutions in the world, and consistently they are 2,200 students and 500 or 600 faculty members. A very, very, very healthy ratio of faculty to students, etc. Of course, they got set up in a different time and geography. How can we replicate any of those ideas in India? That's a challenge. But new ideas are required to do that, and I'm hopeful there will be more institutions that will do the same. That's where I'll stop right now.
Thank you. I think great insights, Professor Narayanan. It reminds me around 15 to 18 years back when I used to be at McKinsey and Company, and I was actively involved with the setting of the Indian School of Business. How dynamic at that point of time the state of Andhra Pradesh was bidding for the Indian School of Business and making sure that the institution is set up in Hyderabad. So congratulations for that. One recommendation for the state of Telangana.
State of Telangana has done very well in getting these two institutions. They should think, they should support more institutions. The support is, see, institutions can get far by getting support that is foundational. That is infrastructure or something very foundational. Paying bills, everyday bills, is not a very good way of supporting institutions, because that money gets spent very quickly. So Telangana has been doing well in, after Telangana is formed, they have been equally, if not more, progressive about supporting institutions like ours and ISB. And they should continue that. The Private University Act of Telangana is now operational. There are a few institutions have started. A few universities have started. They should provide similar support that we and ISB got many years ago to these other institutions that are coming up.
Thank you. I think that's great input. We have Mr. Ramanathan with us. Could you please switch on your camera, sir? Lovely. So Mr. Ramanathan is the mission director of the Atal Innovation Mission. We all know what a wonderful role you're playing. The topic is right up your sleeve, sir. Indian institutions need innovation. Indian universities will have to bring in innovation, create more startups. Hopefully, we speak about the Stanford model, bring in more money through sustainability, through new startups, etc. So you've been playing a great role in this one as far as the Atal Incubation Mission is concerned, Mr. Ramanathan. Would love to hear your views. How does your mission interact and align with the new education policy? Very specific recommendation that you might have for the state of Telangana.
Yeah. Thank you, Atul, and good morning to everybody who has logged on to this call. I hope all of you are safe and healthy in these very difficult COVID-19 circumstances, and you're practicing the safeguards that are advocated by your health authorities or government institutions or whichever institution you're part of. First of all, I need to share that the new education policy is very well aligned with the Atal Innovation Mission initiatives that were launched about 3.5 years ago. As most of you are aware, the Atal Innovation Mission was launched by the Honorable Prime Minister under the auspices of the NEP, which is the National Institution for Transforming India. And the purpose was, this was a transformational initiative, conceived as a transformational initiative, and also considered as a very holistic initiative. How do you create a culture of innovation in the country? And how do you create a problem-solving, innovative mindset, which is the precursor for entrepreneurship and which is a precursor for innovation? If you don't create that culture of innovation and you do not give opportunities and tools and empowerment to be able to create the culture of innovation, you can dream of creating a lot of entrepreneurs and innovators, but that will not happen. The second is, how do you create the ecosystem of innovation and entrepreneurship that is going to enable these young innovative minds, bright innovative minds who have been exposed to this culture to be able to express themselves through their innovation, through their entrepreneurship, through their startup initiatives, and so on. And of course, the Honorable Prime Minister, in his very eloquent address of Atmanirbhar Bharat, identified the 5 pillars of Atmanirbhar Bharat, that is important to be focused on. And in all of these pillars, unless you have innovation, entrepreneurship ingrained and integrated into every one of the activities related to these pillars, you're not going to make much headway. So take, for example, the first pillar, the pillar of demographic dividend that you talked about. How do we ensure that a country which is having 1.3 billion people, 1.4 million schools, 10,500 engineering and related institutions, 39,000 colleges, and more than 150 million young students entering into the workplace, how do you empower them and inculcate in them a culture of innovation and problem solving so that they become not just rote learners at the school level or the university level, trying to just move from one level to another by getting marks in an exam, but how do you actually convert this entire educational system into a problem solving, innovative, mindset based education system where people learn how to solve problems, leveraging technologies that are emerging out in the marketplace and which is going to constantly change. It's going to be enhanced, it is exponentially changing. So, how do you create this culture of innovation that is continuously able to absorb new technologies, new ways of solving problems, and then use that to create a nation of job creators? We want not just a nation of job seekers. We have proved ourselves in that. It has served us very well so far. We are a $190 billion industry with all the schools and universities and the emphasis on education for engineering and so on. But we have primarily been a nation which is servicing the needs of the world as well as some of the needs of India through job seeking. How do we now transform the entire mindset and enable a nation of job creators and a nation of innovators, a nation of startups? And I think a lot has been happening in the startup world, as all of you are aware. We have now more than 50,000 startups in our country. We have more than 34 unicorns. In fact, the latest study showed from the GII index that more than 60 Indians are responsible for unicorns across the world, out of which 30 to 34 are based in India and the other are based outside. So that's a remarkably large number of Indian innovators making their stamp on the rest of the world. It just shows that we have never lacked for great innovators, great thinkers, great scientists, great engineers and doctors, or philosophers or artists. But what it has shown is that when they get chance to get exposed to an ecosystem of innovation, they are able to realize their full potential. So you have a Satya Nadella heading Microsoft, a Sundar Pichai heading Google, Shantanu Narayan heading Adobe. You have a number of our Indian professors leading in world-class universities. There are leading doctors. All of them, when they get a chance to get exposed to that level of innovation and entrepreneurship ecosystem, they blossom and they are able to contribute tremendously to the economy. So how do we ensure that we in India are able to create that? And that is why the Atal Innovation Mission has focused on, at a school level, creating thousands of tinkering labs, which will create this culture of innovation. In a manner of speaking, the Atal Tinkering Labs have been a forerunner for the new education policy in terms of exposing young children who have the appetite, who have the desire, who have an innate innovative talent to get exposed to the latest of technologies like 3D printers, robotics, IoT, miniaturized electronics, and augmented virtual reality through do-it-yourself kits. But more importantly, what it has exposed, and I would say these are technology platforms which are going to change. Every year, you're going to have something new coming up. You now have artificial intelligence do-it-yourself kits. You're going to have blockchain do-it-yourself kits. And you're going to have many other do-it-yourself kits emerging out. Just yesterday, I was talking with the director of Lego, who have introduced Mindstorm, a wonderful kit for young children to be able to innovate in robotics. And that is between grade 6 to grade 12. But the more important thing is that what the Atal Tinkering Labs have been able to do and what universities have to do and what our higher educational institutions have to do in much greater measure is introduce everybody to the art of problem solving, problem identification, design thinking, critical thinking, and acquire all skills which are required, which is why the emphasis on vocational skills, the emphasis on knowledge and academic courses and research is as important as the focus on innovation. And so at the school level today, we have more than 5,000 tinkering labs with more than 2.5 million students exposed to all these technologies. And it's marvelous to see how these young students at grade 6 to grade 12 are innovating, creating robotic-based waste management systems, IoT solar panel-based irrigation management systems, healthcare surveillance systems. I mean, for COVID-19, we have had a number of young students create solutions which are contactless doorbells and so on and so forth. I mean, you have to see what is happening in that community to be able to believe it. And Telangana has been a leader in terms of the number of schools who have been having Atal Tinkering Labs. I think they have more than 400 to 450 Atal Tinkering Labs. And this government, I have to compliment the government for taking a very integral role in, on a voluntary basis. There are the Telangana Educational Councils. They have created a network of mentors beyond the mentors of change that we have created across the country to be able to support all these tinkering labs. Now, if you go to the next level of education, which is the higher universities and so on, we need to create world-class incubators. Of course, all our startups, we have a startup nation, but so far, more than it's not been found, it has been found through data that is quite evident that without an incubator or without the support that an incubator allows in eliminating or overcoming the various valleys of death, as they call in a startup's life cycle, most of the startups, a great idea doesn't germinate into a great product, it doesn't germinate into a great company, and it doesn't become a great multinational company. That is what we have to facilitate. And that is why we are setting up incubators across the country in universities and in institutions, which will be able to foster 25 to 30 startups every 2 years by giving a grant of 10 crores to every university which is applying and successfully applies and merits Atal Incubator. Today we have in our country, not just from Atal Innovation Mission initiatives, but other initiatives also, close to about 400 to 500 incubators in our country. And that's very good. From my point of view, any world-class university should have a world-class incubator in order to enable the young, talented students from that university have an opportunity to create a startup, to create an entrepreneurial initiative, to be able to become a potential job creator. You don't give that opportunity, then the rest of the stuff is the university is just going to get a placement officer. Every university today has a chief placement officer, and their only job is how you can place the students for a job. How about having every university have a research and innovation development officer and ensure that all the organizations with whom they're contact with get an exposure to the innovative capability of the university, get an exposure to the research capability of the university, and becomes an integral part of selecting innovation projects and innovation products rather than just selecting people. That is the transition that we have to do as a nation to be able to come up to the Stanford level and so on. You look at the MITs and you look at the Harvards and you look at the Stanfords and so on, and then you find that there's a whole lot of student population who gets enabled, enthused, and energized to be able to address startup opportunities which are out there. And the research which is done in the universities moves into an applied research form, some of them, and then they move on into innovation. And that is what the Atal Innovation Mission is trying to do through the Atal Incubator Scheme. Today, we have more than 70 incubators across the country. More than 1,500 startups have got originated from here over the last 2.5 years. And that's an amazing number, just to see the number of startups coming out. And out of that, what has been most heartening from my perspective is that there are 500 women-led startups from these 1,500 startups. Now, that's close to about 30% or 33% of the startup. We want it to become 50% so that this gender equality, the gender diversity, and the benefits of gender diversity in entrepreneurship and innovation has a tremendous impact. In fact, I want to share with you that in the Atal Tinkering Labs, we run what is known as a tinkering marathon every year, where students are given challenges and they identify problems within that particular sector, and they create an innovation, a prototype of an innovation that is finally selected for recognition. In the last year, more than 50,000 students participated in that. More than 8,000 prototype of innovations got created. And in the top 200, 45% of the winners were girl students. Now that is showing that in fact, why this number is very important is we still don't have 50% enrollment of girls in schools. So which means our enrollment of girls in schools is still below the 40% mark or 30% mark in many schools. But when we have 45% of the winners, it shows the tremendous capacity of the girl student to be able to leverage their innovative skills and demonstrate their innovative capability and entrepreneurial capability out there. And this is something that we need to enable. The third initiative that we have is community innovation centers. And again, in community innovation centers, we get the universities to be able to contribute to that. Now, all of this is perfectly aligned with the new education policy. The new education policy, as the Honorable Prime Minister said, it focuses on 5 pillars. One is the pillar of access. How are you going to enable all the students from all the communities have access to world-class educational facilities? Second is it addresses the problem of equality. Equality of gender, equality of whether irrespective of the economic base that you have, how do you bring that equity to bear in every aspect of education so that our children get educated and become innovative and become not only great in their jobs which they are seeking, but also become great job creators. The third is the quality of the institution, the pillar of quality. How do you bring standardization? And therefore, the HECI, which has been formed, is the umbrella organization under which you are able to standardize on the educational requirements, processes, the methodologies, the infrastructure, and so on and so forth, which is so very crucial if you want to have a quality education system. The fourth is the affordability aspect. How do we ensure that education becomes affordable across the country? We have 715 districts, out of which 115 are aspirational districts. And these aspirational districts are at the bottom of the pyramid in terms of access to good healthcare, education, etc., and so on. So that affordability has to be addressed not only from an economic point of view or a facilitation point of view, but also leveraging digital technology, which can play a very great role in reducing the cost and enabling ubiquitous access. And finally, it also focuses on the pillar of accountability. How do we ensure that our educational systems are accountable in terms of creating world-class students and innovators across the country? So for that, you have to have facilities like incubation, you have to have great mentoring capability, you have to have wonderful relationship with the private sector and all the other stakeholders. And that has to be, we need to have great alumni networks, for example. One thing which is missing in Indian universities is the focus on alumni. Students go out and become very good, they go abroad, but they don't have a means of connecting back and giving back to the society from which they came from, to the community of schools or colleges where they graduated from. And we need to enable all of that, because the more you have the stakeholders, the more you're going to be able to enable all of this. And finally, I do think, if you look at the Global Innovation Index, where we leapt from rank 81 in 2015 to rank 48 right now. A close analysis of all the GII parameters shows a few things which are pretty surprising, but then when you look upon it, it is not so surprising also. We have scored very highly in creative outputs and knowledge outputs. That is the amount of investment that we do in research and innovation as compared to the outcomes of research and innovation are disproportional, and disproportional in the right area. I mean, we create more outputs than the inputs that we give. Now that is the good news. The bad news is we are not doing enough of it. So we are only spending 0.78% of our GDP on R&D, whereas we should be aspiring to 2% or up to 3%. Now this, many people will say, how does the government play a role in all of this? But I think the private sector has to play a much bigger role in the enablement of research and development in our country. In any advanced economy that you see, 70% of the R&D comes from the private sector. You look at programs like Yozma in Israel, you look in Korea, the Brain Korea, and so on and so forth. You look at the Mittelstand in Germany, you look at a Fraunhofer set of institutions which are enabling private sector to contribute to applied research and development. Everywhere, private sector plays a very big role. How do we incentivize and attract the private sector to play a much bigger role in our universities to spawn world-class research in areas where we still are having a level playing field? Artificial intelligence, nanocomputing, cognitive computing, biotech, all of these are absolutely nascent fields where India has a chance to leapfrog into the future. as much as any other country has. So how do we now get the private sector excited and get them to participate in this revolution that is happening? That is important. And I also want to compliment Telangana government. I think they've been doing a brilliant job with the universities, the focus on not only IT education, but also on the arts and the sciences and the commerce institutions, business management. You need to have a holistic approach. It is not just engineering which is going to take us to the future. It is a combination of blended arts and science and technology that's going to enable to see the new India of our dreams. With that, thank you so much for giving me an opportunity to share a few words and a few thoughts on this occasion.
Thank you very much, Mr. Raman. I've always believed that institutions of higher learning become so critical as far as the broader community development is concerned. Let's go back and look at the Silicon Valley. My belief is Silicon Valley exists because of Stanford and UC Berkeley, and there's so many more examples. You've got the telecom corridor in Boston because of Harvard and MIT. You've got the manufacturing corridor out there in Shanghai because of Tsinghua University. So institutions of higher learning will play a great role. And it's so heartening to know that with initiatives like yours, there'll be many, many more such innovation coming into India. I'm going to make a very strong statement over here, and please don't mind me. But I went to IIT Kanpur, and when I look at Kanpur as a city and look at the contribution of IIT Kanpur to the city of Kanpur, I feel very ashamed. I feel ashamed because while IIT Kanpur was progressing, the city of Kanpur went into the dogs. And that's really the story of Indian higher institutions. Hopefully, with efforts like yours and efforts of our dear Prime Minister, these things will be reversed and we will soon attain the type of glory that we always wanted to. I've now got with me Ms. Amrita, who's from the University of Edinburgh. And one of your board members is a very dear friend, Ms. Rita Fraser. And I was actually with her 6 months back before COVID hit us. And there's a typical tussle between Oxbridge and University of Edinburgh, like it typically is between the IITs and the non-IITs in India. And clearly the whole issue of sustainability and funding would always come up, where the primary funding from the government always going to the Oxbridge, which is Cambridge, and Oxford always sort of getting most of it. So would love to hear your thoughts about what's really happening in the UK system. They're also looking at bringing in more private funding. Sustainability models are being challenged, and how can India learn from the UK model, Amrita?
Thank you so much, Professor Khosla, and thank you to Vicky and others who've organized this for giving me an opportunity to speak here. I'm the Regional Director South Asia for the University of Edinburgh, and I've been based in Mumbai with the university since 2010. So a few words about the university and then what we're doing in India and how it all ties together with the questions being talked about here. So the University of Edinburgh was established 437 years ago. It has today 45,000 students, about 40% of which are international. One of the most interesting statistics, I think, to share is that we have 4,500 academics, but about 6,000 professional services staff, amongst which I count myself as one. And that is one of the key differences that we see between Indian and global universities. We are a top 20 global institution. We've been ranked 20 by QS World 2020 rankings this year. And I think the way we see ourselves as an institution, we are very much about knowledge. We are curators and creators of knowledge. We are about skilling people and supplying those pool of people to the public sector, to industry. We are very much about social mobility. We are about providing opportunities for people, for first generation learners to grow and develop and to impact their families. And this very much centered around the UK as a civic university, but also globally. We are about economic growth. So we're about job creation. We have an arm called Edinburgh Innovations, which helps commercialize in every way, spin out startups, consultancy, contracting, etc. Since 1967, when Edinburgh Innovation was established, we have launched more than 500 companies. Since 2010, these companies have had an 85% survival rate. But we have a very high survival rate, I think, all through the life of this. So Edinburgh is, of course, very well known because, Scotland and tartan and the history, and we like being known for all those things, but we're also, known for some of these more sort of innovative, industry-led sort of statistics. And last sort of pillar for us is civic leadership. We see ourselves very much as a university that's embedded into the city. We have a civic responsibility to the city, and we engage with it at all levels, whether it's the person walking on the street, looking at our buildings, wanting to come in and engage, wanting to know what we're doing, and also providing, a very open conversation and communication, whether it's a, vibrant form of lectures or events. We invite people in, we give people a voice. For myself, as an employee of the university, but based overseas, I can walk into the university, ask anyone a question, and I will be given an answer. Similarly, at the Scottish Parliament. So that's, who we are as an institution. Why are we here? Why are we here in India and also have presences across 7 other regions across the world? For us, diversity, inclusion, and innovation in our global engagement is very, very important. Edinburgh has always been a global university. Since its inception, we've had one of the first Indian and Chinese students to study abroad. And we've respected that. We had the first Indian Student Association to be established in the UK. And today, that engagement is not about, simply recruiting large numbers of Indian students. We have an excellent student population on our campus, but it's not just about that. We have a huge portfolio of research partnerships in India. We have a very interesting history of student mobility across India, faculty engagement across India between our faculty and the university. So just some statistics, we have had a joint publication of about 185 papers with an incredibly high impact factor only in the last 3 years with India, with 106 institutions. The joint funding coming out of UK-India research just with Edinburgh, only to Edinburgh, is over £30 million in the last 3 years only. So, and again, this is not just about money. This is about the deep relationships we're building, and this is about impact. So most of our work in India is about addressing the global challenges, SDGs, and, we learn as much from our Indian partners as we do, as we feel that we contribute to them. What does sustainability to us mean in terms of financial sustainability at these times? I think for all of us as educational institutions, it's very important not to be complacent. Yes, we are structured and quite differently from Indian institutions. We are a government institution. We are not, a private institution like some of the top American institutions we've been talking about. But over the years, we have reduced our reliance on government support, and we have endowments. We have a very strong industry engagement. We also engage very much with, trusts, philanthropists, etc. So we have, and I think our industry engagement is very interesting. Other than, the spin-out startups, entrepreneurship that we promote, for example, we have partnered with Legal and General, a big UK-based firm on a £20 million piece of research, very relevant to today's situation of, in terms of supporting aging, health, lifestyle, and all of that. So it's about partnering with organizations that share the same values, that share the same, goals, but not really trying to put it in a box. This is not a very typical university company engagement. And another interesting form of engagement is we have a lot of innovation hubs across the university focused on some of the expertise areas. So, for example, we're one of the oldest institutions to teach artificial intelligence. It's now called the School of Informatics. It started off being the School of Artificial Intelligence in the 1960s. And that institution is doing research from everything from how you control crowds and population when the population of the city of Edinburgh, which is tiny, of just about 600,000 people, to 2 million during the Edinburgh festivals in August in normal times, pre-pandemic times. And how does the city manage that? To working on the robot with NASA, Valkyrie, preparing for the mission to Mars, etc. So it's about sort of innovation and engagement. It's about not putting ourselves in boxes. It's about agility. So yes, we are lucky that our international student and UK student and European student populations are not hugely affected this year. We're blessed with that, but we are certainly challenged with the income that one usually would see from conferences, events, accommodation, and that's not going to return anytime soon. So I know that we have very strong systems of governance, oversight. There's lots of discussions, not talking about what's happening today and how we address this, but it's about future proofing and understanding that this is this is how things are, and this is how we need to be. So I hope that, and also, thank you very much to Telangana. We have been very interested in engaging more deeply with the state. We're very interested, Mr. Ramanathan, with all that you've said about the ambition to engage with in these sort of new innovation models. And I think we can offer models, and we'd love to develop new ones in partnership with India. That's something that works there, and let's bring it here. It's not contextual. So I hope that helps, and look forward to a little more discussion on this.
So wonderful, Amrita. I'm going to ask a blunt question over here. The new education policy looks at foreign institutions establishing campuses in India. Are you guys looking at that? Will Telangana be a choice for you?
So the University of Edinburgh is very interested in engaging in India, and we have been in very interesting ways. Our models of engagement will not include taking an Edinburgh University and setting up an Edinburgh University anywhere else in the world. But we are, very open to partnership, and those kind of partnerships need not be with another university. So we are, for example, we have in China a couple of engagements where we are partnered with a university to develop a new program that's bespoke for that, whatever requirement and the context. But in India, we're actually hoping to engage directly with the government and with other players in higher education. We very much like to talk to industry. For myself, ideally the partnership would be industry, government, and I think state governments are very powerful and have a great opportunity here to address these challenges, to come together to create a new model. So does an Edinburgh University want to talk about getting land and putting up a building? No. But do we want to engage in creating something that's hugely sustainable, that's exciting both for us and the partners in India? Whether it's about curriculum, new models of teaching, working to create new models of innovation with industry. Yes, we're very open to that.
I'd like to just add here, Atulji and
please go ahead.
Yeah. Actually, we have been building a number of relationships with universities in different parts of the world from 2 or 3 perspectives. One is, how do you stimulate innovation exchange between universities in India and universities here? We have now a very thriving and a vibrant incubation ecosystem in many universities. So it is of great advantage to be able to bring together universities like the University of Edinburgh and have tie-ups on innovation exchange, startup exchanges from these universities, or incubation exchanges between these universities and partners here. We have set up, for example, with Nanyang University, the NEP Aayog has enabled a relationship with them in specific areas like artificial intelligence and so on. So there may be areas that universities across the world, like the University of Edinburgh, may be wanting to focus on. And so we'll be able to find and help in building such partnerships. The second is, there is also tremendous merit in being able to launch hackathons and challenges which are common to both the countries, and combining maybe the skill and the scale that is available in Edinburgh and the scale that is offered in India to be able to implement and pilot some of these solutions that emerge out of these challenges. So that's again an area that quite a few universities from different parts of the world are working with Atal Innovation Mission, and not only with us, but with DST and so on and so forth. So we'll be more than happy to facilitate from the government side and from NEP Aayog side any initiatives on that.
Thank you very much.
Go ahead, Amrita. Go ahead.
Yes, no, thank you very much. We are more than open. We've been following the developments. We've had some interesting conversations at the Aayog level around our expertise in artificial intelligence as related to robotics and manufacturing, but also on data science related to health. So
Right.
one of the things that I wanted to briefly mention is that the UK, Scottish, and EU governments have jointly awarded very significant funding to the University of Edinburgh. 60 or 70% of this funding goes to the University of Edinburgh to help create Edinburgh and southeast Scotland as the data capital of Europe. And what that means is just making the entire population data literate, whether it's from toddlers up to sort of continuing education. And how do we create this sustained program of sort of engagement around that in the community? I mean, we've seen institutions like the Triple IT in Hyderabad. So I haven't engaged with you directly, but with your predecessor, I've had some excellent discussions. These are institutions, I think, ready to us. You already, as you said, you're doing very well. You're internationally, globally respected and recognized. Can we take this further? Can we take it to another dimension?
Sure.
I'm so glad that matchmaking is already happening on this forum. So thank you for bringing it up, Ramanathan. I'd like to also mention over here that when we think about innovation, it's so much about the culture that you bring into a higher educational institution. At Shulani, which I founded in Himachal Pradesh, we've always believed that research and innovation should be in the heart of an institution. So as we speak, we are one of India's leading patent filers, all done by students. Our research impact is amongst the highest in the country, top 3 in the country actually, and we all get it funded through different competitive grants. So I think if there are other institutions which are private in nature, which are listening to us, I would like to say that many times we try to become ostriches and keep on complaining against the government. There's enough funding which is available. I think the desire is important, and the culture of innovation you need to bring it into the institution. And then you've got great partners like University of Edinburgh also ready to partner if you've got the right culture of that. Because the topic is going to be the government of Telangana, and we want to give some recommendations to them. We'll go. I'm coming to you only. Absolutely, I'm coming to you. So why don't you give your thoughts and also at least 3 recommendations for the government of Telangana?
To me?
From your end, yes, sir.
No, I just wanted to continue both what Amrita and Ramanan mentioned. It's very important to have innovation and startup culture as very part of the universities. And Triple IT Hyderabad, we started our incubator in 2008, and we completed 10 years, and we were told in about 5 years' time, from then we were told we are among the largest academic incubators in the country. We didn't know that. Somebody else told us looking at our statistics. And then, the Telangana government invested very heavily into this whole thing. They set up T-Hub, and I can proudly say T-Hub is definitely located in our campus, but it grew out of the experience of our own incubator. One of the very first meetings we had with the IT minister, we said our incubator is doing well and we are running out of space. He said that's a happy problem to have, and that's a problem we would like to fix. And then that was the root of this whole T-Hub and the entire environment that Telangana is trying very hard to create. And one recommendation I would have to Telangana government is, they are doing it already. They are taking it not just to a few elite institutions in Hyderabad or around, but also to the tier 2, tier 3 cities, towns in the country, in the state, and to other institutions. They have started a process of establishing this innovation or startup or incubators in every university. And I think it's progressing quite well. Some of my faculty members, our own incubator people, have been involved in helping that, and that is something that they should push hard. It is a long journey, and also there is a belief that today that incubation startup means only IT and some mobile phone and app. I mean, there are many ideas out there, especially the rural people. I mean, they do their own innovation. They don't get any support. And there are technology support will definitely help, but it is not about technology only. And this T-Hub is about Telangana Hub, and they do have focus on other agricultural, other technologies. yes, today IT or computing will be a major partner in making things efficient and fast. But let us think beyond that also, and I think that thinking is there in the Telangana government, and we would like to foster that. And coming to Edinburgh, I think IIIT Hyderabad has had strong research relationship, but this happens in the group to group or individual to individual basis, because Edinburgh has probably the strongest groups in AI, and especially the natural language processing. And IIIT Hyderabad has been the pioneering group and largest group in natural language processing in the country, and we have had dozens of our students go and get PhD there, and some of them have come back and are adjunct faculty or helping us and so on. So I'm glad to see these connections. Thank you.
Thank you. I think that was extremely valuable. I've written down 2 recommendations from your end. One is a startup in every college and university of the state. I think that's a great one. Typically, when we think about incubators, we limit ourselves to the premier institutions, and I think if we can have them up to the colleges, that's really where the trickle will start hitting the common man. The second, of course, you spoke about infra support to new universities. That's something that I think you started off giving the example of ISB and IIIT Hyderabad. So great 2 recommendations. Mr. Ramanathan, from your end, do you see incubation, innovation, new startups actually becoming a big funding source for universities going forward?
Yeah, in fact, one of the things that we have actually encouraged every one of our incubators to do, we give them a grant for 5 years. One of the conditions associated with that is that you have to become self-sustainable within that next 5 years, within those 5 years, which means you have to be able to tap into the venture capital market. You have to tap into the private industry. You have to be able to stand on your own legs. Your startups, we gave them a simple formula saying, if we are investing X in you, how can you convert that to 5X in terms of external investments that can come in? And I think incubators can become a great source of potential funding for applied research, innovation to a university. Because one of the things we also said when we set up these incubators, where mostly we set it up in universities, 70% are in universities, the others are in private institutions and NGOs and so on and so forth, because we want to encourage innovation in the private sector. But we put a condition that this incubator has to be separately run, even if it is within the university campus. It has to have a dedicated CEO. The CEO should not be a professor from the university who's having also alternate responsibilities of conducting classes and so on and so forth. He could be a professor who wants to become the CEO of the incubator. We don't have a problem. But this needs a dedicated focus, because you need to do outreach events. You need to find out great startups from within and outside the community that you're in. You need to encourage the students to create startups, and you need to bring the private sector very strongly here to become self-sustainable. So I think they will become a great source of funding for the university, because and the university should give access to its technology lab, research labs. They should, when they are conducting research, they should also have an eye that how much of this research, the lab to the field that Honorable Prime Minister talks about, that should be a focus. How much of your research that you're doing finally finds itself into the market? And there is basic research, which is non-compromisable, but then there is a whole lot of applied research, which we never see finds fruition in the marketplace. And that is where the university and the incubator can work together very well and be able to build on the relationship and be of benefit to both each other.
Where I come from, so definitely going to pass some of these recommendations to them. Your last thoughts, Amrita. I'd love to hear more. Of course, we've spoken a lot about incubation. We've spoken about a lot about innovation. But let's think about creating a University of Edinburgh scale university in India. Do you think that's doable? A university that's a top 20 university, we're still like in the 300s, 400s as far as rankings are concerned. Do you think in the next 10 years, 15 years, India will see the emergence of a university of the scale of University of Edinburgh? And if yes, what can the state of Telangana do to attract a university like that or build a university like that?
Thank you. That's a very nicely controversial question. I think there's a lot of debate on rankings and their value, Professor Khosla, and I also question that though we enjoy our status as a top 20 global institution, and by most rankings are quite in the top 50. Does India need to achieve that? I mean, it is a matter of prestige, and it would be nice to see India in that. Yes. But I think what's really important is, for universities based here, whether they're, coming from elsewhere or the ones here, and I would lean to the excellent institutions that we already have here, is can we achieve, that sense of, like you talked about, Kanpur, a true, strong civic university? Can we achieve that industry engagement and innovation? These are the important questions to focus on. And I think the ranking will come. Whether it's look at it from a global perspective or anything, that is a truly successful university. We know that we're already excellent and world class at churning out, some of the best talent, some of the best entrepreneurs. There is no doubt about that. Can we loop them in better? Can we create that alumni dialogue and therefore bring, those connections and that support, that donor support that all institutions need? Can we create or develop that ecosystem very quickly to welcome and use those alumni funds, or even funds from industry, in a way that university industry wants to come and work with us, work with institutions, and support its development. Because the more real world interaction we have, the more we as institutions in India are going to become sort of successful and right up there. I mean, one of the things I mentioned right at the beginning, one of the things about the university, that we have 6,000 professional staff. What is professional staff? Does that align with the kind of stuff?
Nipa, we are losing you. I think there's some challenge with your sound. You want to try again? I think there's an echo which is coming.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Yes, please go ahead.
So I was saying that we have 6,000 professional staff at the university. Professional staff in UK universities are valued as much as academic staff. And we have great responsibility, and we have deliverables. And what do this professional staff do? For example, the CEO of an innovation center, they may be an academic or not, but they are fully focused on that professional role of creating a strong innovation incubation ecosystem. And we have so many. This allows our academics to really focus on what they need to do best: to research, to teach, to mentor. And to innovate. So, I think these are some of the things that Indian institutions need to think about. And also, I think the Indian ecosystem needs to be very open to innovative models of engagement with overseas organizations, whether it's higher education companies. And I think we have the potential to get there. Can we be clear of mind and really focused and get there? I certainly hope so. And I think I would hope for that.
Just to add to that, if I may, Amrita brought a very important point of collaboration between universities in India and abroad. And but I also think there is a tremendous amount of collaboration that is needed between universities in a particular state. That is also missing. What I would like to suggest, I mean, if you look at Manufacturing USA, which is an organization of 17 different universities focusing on different areas, some focusing on robotics, some focusing on artificial intelligence, and so on. Can we create within every state a cluster of universities focusing on one particular area or two particular areas, so that they're able to share? If, for example, ISB is focusing on, let us say, management or marketing and finance, and they are talking to 5 other institutions there who are also focusing on that, that cluster of universities will bring tremendous multiplication power to what is happening in the ecosystem. And similarly on AI, or similarly on robotics, or similarly on IR 4.0 or whatever, right? I think this sort of collaboration is, many universities are all trying to do the same thing. It is good, not that you should not, but how can you also collaborate and bring the benefits of what is happening across? And I think there the Telangana state can play a leadership role in trying to enable maybe 8 or 9 cluster of universities working together on specific problems, which can put India in a leadership position.
I think I have to unmute myself. I'm going to close with a small anecdote. I was with the provost of Oxford asking him, what makes Oxford? What makes a great university? And he looked at me and said very proudly, 900 years. I looked at him and said, 900 years, oh God, but I've only got 10. And he said, you must be smoking, son. I said, no, I'm not. If Google and IBM, if Google and Facebook can beat the heck out of IBM in 5 to 7 years or 10 years, there's no reason why institutions which are the new age institutions cannot go out and disrupt the whole ecosystem of education. The message I'm giving is, yes, we have to learn from the biggies of the world, but sitting in India, we have to look at disruption in a very different way. I love the whole thought of collaboration you spoke about over here, Mr. Ramanan. We, for example, are doing very, very high-end research right now, not because we have the money, but because we're sending all the materials over to the Stanfords of the world where the research is actually happening, the experiments are happening, and we're doing the analysis. So you're breaking the value chain, and that's what Indian institutions have to do. They have to collaborate. They have to align with great institutions like the University of Edinburgh. But more importantly, I think within ourselves, we need to also collaborate. So I'm personally going to reach out to each one of you. Hopefully, we can collaborate. Hopefully, we can make the state of Telangana a great hub of education. And hopefully, Hyderabad can actually become and compete with the Silicon Valley of the world. Thank you once again very, very much. You know, I'm just recovering from COVID. I was very nervous because this is my first interaction after 15 days of hell. And I thought I will not get energy. But I got so much energy from this discussion. It is so amazing. Thank you very, very much for, once again, a wonderful discussion. And hopefully we can take these recommendations to the state of Telangana. Have a great day, viewers. And have a great day, panelists. Bye-bye.
Thank you, Atul. Stay safe. Stay strong.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All the herbal medicines worked. Thank you, Professor Narayan.